There we go. G'day, listeners, and welcome back to another very special episode of the Matter Mentality Podcast. We talk all things training, nutrition, and psychology to maximize your performance. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. There's a bit of a backlog story here that involves a very good friend of both of ours as to how this connection happened. But in typical Cav fashion, it did happen. But a bit of background here for how we've got Coach Vince on the episode. We're in America. We're balls deep in our trip and our travels. We've just spent all day in Washington, D.C. We've finished up with the mastermind. We've traveled around. We're on the Amtrak waiting to get at the train station. And we get this audio message from Cav. And all it says is, hey, there's someone you have to meet in Jersey. He literally is staying in Voorhees where you're staying. You guys have to connect. He's free on one of these days. Booking a message him. I'm going to send you his details and you guys make it happen. And I was like, sure, Cav. Usually it's one of those things that Cav says where it's like, yeah, okay, it'll happen. He's like, you guys have to podcast, bring cameras, bring your audio equipment. I'm like, we're traveling 4 hours to get up there. I don't even know what equipment's set up right now. It's probably going to have to be in a couple of days' time. I'm sure Vince has got some things going on as well. Cav's like, no, you got to bring your cameras. It's like, let's just catch up and see if we gel first. Let's see if we actually connect and get along. Next minute, we've booked in, we've linked up. We'll catch up for a half-hour coffee. I'm pretty sure 3 hours went by and we're still talking psychology, performance, training, nutrition, mindset of athletes. But that was pretty much the way this whole thing came together. And Cav's like, I think you two guys, you need to connect and have a chat. And we're like, yeah, okay, sure, Cav, we'll connect. And 3 hours later go by and Brooklyn's like, God, you guys can talk. So in saying all of that, I am joined by Coach Vince of Bloodline Hockey. How are we doing, my friend? Thank you for jumping on.
Doing awesome, man. And moral of the story, Coach Cav was right.
Yeah, just listen to Cav. He'll love to hear this snippet, but listen to Cav.
Yeah, doing good, man. Doing good. Appreciate you having me on. I'm excited. Like you said, it was like a wild conversation to sit there and we're just like, it's a rarity, right? Where you meet people like that in life, and it's just like we just keep going and nerding out, and it was awesome to connect and be able to continue the fun.
Yeah. I think one of the things that makes it interesting is our realm of study and knowledge and expertise is, I don't want to say it's unique, but it's not common thread. It's not like, I get a lot of people on here and we'll talk about like, drug protocols, training protocols, nutrition, body composition, performance coaching. But in the mindset performance coaching space, I think there's a lot of people that are gurus, but, the depth of conversation is very rare where you actually connect with someone. You're like, oh, this guy gets it. This guy's someone I can actually converse with. And it's not like, let's just simplify it. Like the language we're using wasn't like we're sitting there being pretentious philosophers at, academics in campus, but it was just like the flow of the conversation. There was no dead space for like 2 straight hours. And it's very rare where it's like at that the mental side where it's like someone else has that same passion towards it. I've not met many yet where it's like, that's what they want to talk about. You meet people like they want to talk about baseball and I love it. They want to talk about NFL, love it. Talk about body composition and training, I'm all in. But like when it's someone on our wavelength where it's like, oh, someone else gets it. It's just a different conversation.
Totally. Well, it's funny, right? It's like that performer piece, like to your point too, right? I'll fall into it in the hockey world a lot where a lot want to just talk about hockey. Like that's what they're comfortable with is hockey. But if you start like, all right, well, let's talk about the mindset piece and how it applies to life and how it expands to everything, right? Because it is a lifestyle. We all talk about lifestyle and that's what it's all about. Yet we don't think of it as, oh, we should talk about it in all quadrants. It should be a part of everything. Yeah. I think that's what's so unique, right, about the conversations. We both see it in that lens of like, this isn't I'm going to go to the gym and that's it. I'm only going to think about it while I'm at the gym, or I'm going to go to the rink and that's it. It's no, you're thinking about this all the time. Yeah. And that's a completely different schema, framework, and way of seeing it than most people are used to, right? It's like, I want to go to the place and think about it when I'm at the place, but when I'm at the place, I don't want to think about it. And it's like, I don't know any high performing people that do that.
I don't think it works that way.
It just doesn't. Wait, what?
Yeah, yeah. Hang on, hold up. But it's so
Yeah,
true though, because like to us, it's like you get these people that they're fully invested, they're all ingrained in it, and it's like the idea that outside of the arena, the ring, the sport, the field, every little input that you're putting in, every variable you're putting in, is with the intention of improving that output in the arena that you operate in. So it can't
yeah,
just be, oh, when I'm at training, that's when it's matter when it matters. No, it's when you're at home, when you're relaxing, when you're training, when you're exercising, when you're
exactly.
sleeping, when you're relaxing, taking downtime, when you're playing video games, like the intentionality of it all starts to add up. And you go, well, I work with certain types of clients. I'll program them gaming or something that I know that gets them neurologically switched off so they can decentralize. But it's so that when it comes time to being turned on, they're like, I'm ready to go. And I haven't drained myself elsewhere. I've had that, the parasympathetic dial tone has been turned up a bit and I can relax. But they're all the inputs, the throughputs that we as coaches are like, that matters. It's not just take off
Yeah,
time for off time. It's that off time leads to the better on time, better on field time. But it's like you said,
exactly.
it's very rare where people perceive it at that holistic lens. It's always
Yeah,
like, no, training matters most, nutrition matters most, this matters most, or we'll just talk about. But like you sort of said, I think it's a great sort of peripheral there to kind of lean into is how we sort of, even in the conversation we had in the 2 hours at a Starbucks in Vahis, that's how we've kind of viewed coaching. But it's like you said, it's not a very common practice, right?
yeah, exactly. I think that's the challenge, right? It's funny. I've talked to a few different people, and one of my buddies, he's CEO, runs big company. It's like they've already done a couple of companies at 100 mil plus, all that. And it was always interesting conversations with him about being able to bounce it off of him, right? As a performance coach, you're just saying, hey, you're a CEO, like huge company, you're doing all this stuff. It's like, I can see it where the leaders at the top think holistically and they look at the whole organization. And that's kind of how generally their lens, you're taught that over the years to have to see how you're managing everybody. But in the performance world, we get stuck and everybody kind of has their silo. And I remember working once, with a pro team of where we talked about this a lot, where there was this, nutrition is here, strength and conditioning is here, skills coach is here, head coaches are here, management's here. And we would all have these conversations. Like it was funny when you would kind of be apart and we would all say the importance of coming together.
Mm-hmm.
They would always say, like, it's important that we come together and talk about, well, how do we all think together? And I always thought it was interesting of you could see the feeling of people want to do that. They want to think together, but it's just not taught to look at it as, well, wait a second. If you're a nutritionist or you're a strength coach, stay in your lane, just think about that
Yeah.
stuff, have those conversations about that stuff. Don't even consider how what you're doing in the gym is going to impact how the player thinks and what they do on the ice. That's not your lane. That's a
Yeah.
completely different. That should be the skills coach is going to work on that. Let the skills coach do something completely separate, and you go do it over here. And this separation has been wild to watch for so long, and I think that's why so many people, right? It's the fear of coming out of your lane. The
Yeah.
best of the best are usually a part of some kind of structure or some type of hierarchical system, and they get stuck in that silo, right? Of like it's hard not to become, jaded or kind of just like afraid to speak up, right? Because
Yes.
it's you're in your lane and that's the only thing you should be thinking about. Don't think about this other stuff. Whereas that's not reality performance. We should be,
Yeah.
right? Renaissance. You should know all the arts a little bit. Of
Yeah.
course, there's always going to be expertise, but you should know all the stuff. You should know how it interacts with each other. Like I think we touched on this, right? I give the sandwich analogy. I love to give
Yeah.
that to our players on day one. What's your favorite sandwich? Right? We're talking about Philly here, from Philly area. So if they say Philly cheesesteak, so I'll say, okay, what's on the Philly cheesesteak? And they'll say, right, the bread, the steak, the cheese, the onions, the usual stuff, whatever, some ketchup. Right. These are key ingredients that come together and
Yeah.
synergize. It's the same idea with performance, right? It's okay, if I'm missing the steak, I'm missing a big part of it. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking about everything about it, building a cheesesteak, but the steak's not there, or the cheese isn't there, or the bread's not there. It's the same idea, right? It's like if all you're doing is thinking about the steak and how you can make good steak, but you're not thinking about all the other ingredients that make it, that's where the issue comes in with all this stuff, right? Is that people don't recognize like it's a part of it. Like you have
Yeah.
to consider all the variables, all the ingredients, all the parts of the recipe. And that's the thing I think we all struggle with so much, right? Is like how do you think like that and include that into the process?
Yeah. And coming from a sporting background and coaching bodybuilders, is something I found quite interesting is because a lot of the time it's not a very well paid sport. It's a very expensive hobby. So a lot of the time your clients, your athletes tend to lean into you as like an all-in-one. They don't know any different because it's such an isolating sport, especially if someone's never had a sporting background to go, oh, but when I was in teams, this is what would happen. This is what we do. But in the bodybuilding lane, it's like, hey, this has gone wrong in my life. This has happened in my life. And it's like, I naturally, the type of study that I do and the things that I do, I want to help. And I'm like, these are the areas, these are the things. And I'm very specific with who I bring into my team. If I've got, if I have a relationship with physiotherapists, manual therapists, or specialists, very particular in like, you know, you find sometimes in specialties they try and undercut you, or they try and like talk you down, or like, oh, I wouldn't have done that, or this is we're gonna stop doing that and do this now until this is rehabbed or fixed. It's like, I don't need you to undercut the confidence of my athlete. I just need you to work in the way the system's working. So getting very particular in, who's in the lanes and but at the same time, the entire premise is that we're about serving the athlete to get the best possible result, not serving my own ego or your own ego about whose specialty is dominant or better or what have you. It's trying to get the best out of the athlete. And that might mean rehabbing a shoulder, but I'm still going to train the hell out of their legs and their back and their chest. But it might mean that the shoulder needs a little bit of rehabilitation and some specialty work or some manual treatment. But that's going to help us keep that athlete grounded and pushing and working hard. It's one thing I love about bodybuilding is the ability to be so involved and have that perception on all the variables. But at the same time, like you said, I think there's also in that degree then where it's like now assessing where is your lane and how many things are you trying to, do too much, and you need to actually start outsourcing. It's always like the polar opposites. Team sports is like, hey, you're a specialty coach, just be that guy. Don't be anything else. Bodybuilding lane, you get these like, it's not under finance, but it's just not, it's a very expensive passion and hobby to push as a sport. They're not going to go have a 10-man team in their corner, like in a fight camp, and you've got 10 guys looking after one fighter. That's not going to happen. So you as a coach start to go, well, I got to take care of this. We're going to help you out with this. And, mentally these tools work as well, and try this. It's just it's a funny dynamic to go from the sports realm to bodybuilding, to see that sort of lack of silo, I guess, as you kind of put it.
Yeah. No, you nailed it. It's funny, right? That's probably one of my favorite things about, mindset or mental performance is, phase one is always self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And what you just described was exactly that. As a practitioner, as the leader, so much of that responsibility of, well, the other person, whether you're captain of the team and you're the leader or your coach, so much of that responsibility and that cognitive burden of, all right, what are the pieces? How does it fit together? What's best for the athlete? I'm going to remove my ego from it, use my wisdom, and then realize, all right, what's the best that I can give you? And sometimes that might be, you realize I'm not the best person for what your needs are.
Mm-hmm.
And you just described it beautifully, but that's the hardest part. And why I fell in love with the space is because it keeps you in check constantly, having to mentally really be aware of, well, how do I see it and how do you see it? Right. So we call it depending on who we're working with, we'll call it the duality of hockey, the duality of athlete, the duality of life. Right. So it depends on kind of like whose perspective needs what. But the duality is that yin and yang, that infinity loop, that you're going between me versus we. Right. It's always well, here's what I think. Here's what you think. Here's what I think. It's a constant loop. So you have to check and be able to become aware of that in your process and know, like, okay, here's what I think, but that's what's best for us? Am I going to dial in on what is really helping all of us in this situation? And, a lot of people, we call it empathy, we call all these things, but the reality is if your mind isn't trained to see both sides and consistently transition, right? So like in sports, it's the transition from offense to defense, right? It's always happening. You're in one transition to the next, right? Like it's constantly happening in life, right? It's transition from sleep to wake. Like there's always transitions happening all the time in our lives. But that's the part when you talk about mindset or mental performance, is that transition of going from, all right, here's what I think. Okay, here's what you think. Cool. So how do I mold this as a professional, as a leader, to help make sure that we're all aligned and really optimizing and really supporting you the best that we can, because that's what I'm trained to do. My responsibility, my burden has been trained to think that way to be able to help you as a professional. So maybe you don't have to think about it, or I can at least teach you how to start thinking about it a little, but I'll do the burden of really thinking about the whole to make it so easy for you to understand. And that's the leadership, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. But it's to your point, it is so hard for human beings to align and let their egos go and realize, okay, that's what my role is. That's what I'm here to do.
It's interesting in the coaching space where to find that not lack of ego, to genuinely be in the coaching role and forego ego where your service is purely for the benefit of the athletes. And obviously, at the higher franchise level, you operate in the NHL space. That's as far as we're going to go with that. But we
Yep,
we
thank you.
know that the coaching space, obviously their considerations are to the franchises and to who's put them in positions first and foremost. But we know that as coaches, it's about the athletes and getting the most out of them, which ironically people fail to understand, even in like the body composition, bodybuilding, hypertrophy sort of space. If I can get the best out of the athlete and not do it for myself, ironically, it ends up being the best for myself because they get a crazy result and it's about them, and they're the walking billboard, they're the walking success story in team sports. If I make it about the athletes and make it about their experience and what they need, and how we can better provide the systems for them, lo and behold, they're going to be more bought in, they're going to be more competent, they're going to feel more related to the team, they're going to feel they're going to have autonomy and decision making, they're going to have the systems in place. I spoke about this with Cav on his podcast. They're going to have the self-determination, which is going to lead to higher motivation, and they're going to operate at a higher level. All of a sudden, you look like a hero. But it's because you put them first, the needs above you, and the needs of the team above yourself. And it's like you sort of leaned on there, that leadership position. Man, coaching is one of the biggest leadership positions you can step into. And if you step into it for ego or for self-gratification, I think it's a fast way down. I'm sure it's a quick way up for some people, but it's a very fast and very, I'm guessing, painful way down. And it's you have to lead with a lot of, in my opinion, lead with a lot of, yes, empathy, but also like belief and desire in other people more than yourself
Correct.
to really
Nailed
be
it.
a true leader and coach.
Yeah, you nailed it. Like that's it right there, right? It's interesting. I always think about what you just described, right? It's like I tell people all the time, like, oh, that's so cool. The players you get to work with, da, 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 and all this stuff. And it's funny, one of the first things I point out when people will say that is like, it's kind of funny. You think that I'm teaching them all this stuff and I'm telling them all this stuff. Really, what I spend 90% of my time with these amazing, elite, world-class, type of athletes is helping them understand that what they already know you already know the answer to the test.
Yeah.
I'm just helping you create belief in that answer.
Yeah.
It's amazing how, like, when you shed and go, you ask a couple of questions to your point, self-determination, right? It's like the autonomy of like, what do you think? How do you
Yeah.
see it? Why do you see it that way? Well, what evidence have you experienced to understand that way, that's the truth? Okay, cool. Now that you believe that's the truth, well, let's go put it up against reality and see, is that the actual truth? Yes, it is. Okay, awesome. Then we're going to put all of our cognitive bandwidth into developing that idea. And that's what's amazing is how often people think it's like, coaching or teaching is all about giving more ideas and let me tell you what to do. And I'm going to
Mhm.
tell you how to be the best at what you do. And, that's the example I always give to coaches. I'm like, it can't be this. It can't be, I'm going
Yep.
to tell you what to do.
Yep.
And then the athlete's going to think and do it. It's
Yeah.
got to be the athlete already knows what to do and they're just going to do it.
Yep.
That's the belief system you're talking about, right? Like, we
Yep.
always talk about your thought process will never be faster than your belief system.
Yep.
If it's not in their heads as a natural thought, yes, that makes sense. It never, that's it. Speed is gone. Mental speed. If we all talk about physical speed, mental speed is if I believe it and I see it, boom, it's instantaneous. So everything we're doing has to get to the source of that belief system. And to your point, that comes from the player, that comes from the
Mhm.
athlete of how much do they know the answer, or how much are you coaching them and guiding them to get to it and say, yeah, you know what? That's exactly what I thought. Like, yeah, okay, cool. Now I have confidence in what I thought and what I
Yeah.
believe. Okay, I'm right. Or, yeah, you know what? That's what I thought, but like, that's what it is right there. I need to do more of that to sustain it, to create the conditions so I can feel more natural when the competition comes at that. okay, cool, I got it now. Yeah, I need to be better at my sleep, or I need to be better at nutrition. Like they realize on their own of like, yeah, you know what? That's what it is. I get all frustrated, but it's because I didn't get enough rest. And it's simple things that are foundational, but it's so much of that in today's elite level athlete.
Hmm.
They know the answer, but the amount of information that they're overloaded with, right? I think we touched on it, like it's the diner menu effect. It's
Yeah.
like walking into the diner and wow, there's so much I can eat. But you love the gyro that's here, right?
Yep.
Yes, I love
Yep.
that sandwich. Then pick that gyro. If you know
Yeah.
you came to this place and you know that one's unbelievable, then every other item means
Yeah.
nothing. And
It's
that
it's funny. It's funny you say that because I literally put up a post yesterday. In the realm of body composition, we consider restriction this really taboo word, like restriction of calories, restriction of food, restriction of treats or desserts, and it's got this really taboo taste to it, where it's like you're a demon if you talk about it. You're devilish if you bring it up. It's we're not supposed to be able to say that word. But it was funny in the example that I gave. When we look at natural human behavior, we tend to get more paralyzed by too much choice and too much freedom. And not so much too much freedom, but to a degree, too much freedom. If we have the
Mhm.
option to do everything, we're probably not going to do anything, because then it's like you get that paralysis, right? You're like, oh God, what do I want to pick? Like you said, you've got that menu. And it's like, man, anyone that hasn't been to a Jersey diner, you go to a Jersey diner and the menu availability on those bad boys is, and the service and the portion sizes, like you won't want to leave, but you'll feel disgusted. But you look at it and you're like, there's so many things to choose from. If you don't go in knowing what you're after, or, like a belief of what's good, or, what do I kind of want? What am I leaning towards?
Right.
If you're sitting there adding more ideas or more thoughts to the athlete's head, you're adding more confusion than you realize. You're adding more things to the plate. Instead of going, hey, let's narrow it down. It's breakfast time, not lunch or dinner. Do you feel like a breakfast item? Yeah. Okay, cool. So are we talking pancakes? Are we talking scrambled eggs? Are we talking sausages and meats? Oh, I could really go for something. I've got training. I'll go some carbs. Pancakes sound great.
Getting hungry.
Fantastic. Jersey pancakes are pretty good at the diner. So we're going to narrow that down. What toppings do you want? See, by adding those restricted lenses, helping them make decisions, but not making a decision for them, they're going to get those pancakes. They're going to taste delicious. They're going to feel great. They're going to go train their house and be like, man, I'm sure glad I picked those pancakes. And you go, did you pick the pancakes, or did I help guide you to the pancakes? Either way, we
Exactly.
got to the pancakes, but the client now thinks that they're the one, the athlete now thinks that they did it. They're governed by that confidence. I made the right choice getting those pancakes. Now that client, that athlete has belief, right? Like that's where sometimes that's the post I was getting at with, like, we demonize restriction in the body composition space and the bodybuilding space. But when you have goals, sometimes deliberate periods of specific restriction is essential. And getting that,
Exactly.
whether it's training ideas, whether it's teaching concepts, mental skills, performance skills, throwing everything in the kitchen sink and saying, hey, athlete, pick whichever one you want, they're going to go, I don't know. We come in as
Mm-hmm.
coaches, we're like, hey, maybe this one. What do you think about this one? Or how'd you find this one? Where did you use that last? Have you got any confidence with that one? Oh, that one, I really liked it. I did this and it felt really good. Boom. Now all of a sudden, it's their idea and they did it right.
Nailed it. Nailed it. Because that's what people don't realize. Like it reminds me of, something we talk about often, right? Is that athletes will come in and they'll say, of like, Coach, I don't want to think, I just want to play. I don't want to think, I just want to play. And the irony is I always say, I'm like, well, then we have to think about what you don't want to think about. And that kind of makes their head go, "Whoop." And it's like, you can't just go into a complex system, right? Which is
Yeah.
these high level team sports, which there's a system you have to follow, there's a role that you have, right? There's competition that wants to come after you hard. There's other alphas in the room that are also very highly talented. So there's all these variables that are like, you can't just go in there and say, I just want to play. I just want to come out here and be free and do, and not think about other people and the other restrictions and stay in my lane. Like it doesn't work that way, right? And that's what's so hard for people to understand. And it's always interesting. Like one of the things we'll always use with some of our players is the mathematical argument, right? So system reliability,
Mm-hmm.
90%, right? So if you start to do the math, all right, two components, 90% and 90%. Well, now your system is 81% reliable, right? You use three components, 90%, 90%, 90%. Each one of them, 90% effective. Okay, I'm going to give you more stuff to do. But now you added a third, now it's 72% effective.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep going down the line mathematically. Well, the more components I add to the system, the harder and harder, but the less reliable the output gets. That's to your point, right? Of like where It's being able to teach and say what's the most important thing. And this is
Yes.
the thing that I think a lot of people get twisted up with. Most, especially if you're talking about high performing, like, okay, they're already talented and pretty good at a lot of stuff. If you can find the one thing that's like, wow, that's the thing, it makes the other, right? The primary
Yeah.
target, hit that, and then it makes the secondaries just as strong, or at least elevates them enough where now they don't have to pay attention to it. You don't have to guide them to think
Hmm.
about it. And that's the biggest challenge as a coach is you see all these individualized variables as
Hmm.
opposed to looking at it collectively and saying, you know what, that's just the main thing right there. We
Yeah.
need that. As long as that's there, it'll take care of the other secondaries.
Yeah.
But that's the thing they're not realizing right there. And that's the challenge with this process, to your point, is like, we don't have to teach them to think all the stuff. It's just
Yeah.
what's the most important thing that, like, man, if we get them thinking about that, it'll take care of all the other things that I'm thinking about. That's the art.
And that's for coaches and athletes that are listening here. Um, Even in the body comp, this is where I love how much high performance mindset coaching, psychology coaching really pays into even our realm a bit more specifically than people give credit for. People realize behavior change, motivational interviewing, language change, all these psychological components have such huge roles in getting people to do the things that they need to do. Like you touched on there, if I overload an athlete, I'm like, hey, I need you to track all your food, I need you to track all these variables, I need to train the house down, do these things. In the first 2 weeks of meeting them, they're going to go, fuck, man, calm down. Now, if
Yeah.
you already have that sort of person who's that way inclined, those type A conscientiousness, highly driven, highly task orientated, it's a dream. That's a dream client in our
Mhm.
space. But instead, as the coach, your job is to assess and go, okay, I've done all the pre-screen, I've got all the information I need. What's the thing that this person's missing most right now that's going to build early confidence? Well, they're
Exactly.
really off on their nutritional literacy. Okay, but am I going to teach them about, how carbohydrates break down to glucose? Am I going to teach them how the Krebs cycle works? Am I going to teach them how to get energy from food intake and turn that to kinetic energy? No, we're going to teach them about what do they need most now? They need to get some more protein. Okay, so protein's going to help with training, recoverability, and then you probably get some better source of carbohydrates. Okay, so we're just going to add some things to your plate. We call this like add before subtract. I'm going to add
Right.
nutrient knowledge before I
Exactly.
subtract things and challenge you with restriction. But that simple cue there, it's like we're picking the biggest things first. They're going to improve the primary function, so the secondaries benefit from it, right? Same
Yep.
concept you're talking about here. And this is where I get so frustrated when people are like, oh, it's all training, nutrition, and body composition, or like physique athletes or powerlifters. It's not just training nutrition at all. You extrapolate that concept to any variable space we work in, whether it be physiology, nutrition, psychology, mindset, whatever it might be in that realm. You
Mhm.
find the primary function first, solve for that problem. Generally, you raise the bar just a little bit, and they go, okay, well, now you've got the competency to track protein and carbohydrates. What about getting diversity of fiber? We need to get that in so that you're actually digesting food better and you feel better and you'll get a bit more healthy. And also, we probably need to tune up some sleep. You're only getting like 5 hours a night. All right, let's focus there. And then you go to the client, which one do you want to focus on? Which one do you think needs the most work right now? Well, I'm waking up pretty tired. Okay, so sleep's probably going to be a big deal. When was the last time you had caffeine? Oh, about an hour before I went to bed. Okay, so we're going to stop that. See, like
Mhm.
now, what happens when you improve sleep? Well, suddenly they're more energized, they're more restful, they're more recovered, they're training better, they feel better, they got more buy-in. So, like you said, to that point, this is where those concepts cross fields that we were talking about earlier, looking at the holistic picture,
Right.
taking for that one primary function and throughput into the client and looking at it and going, let's focus there as opposed to let's fix the whole puzzle.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden you've got that output that's going to be, oh, well, sleep's improved, this is improved, and because of that, the downstream effects are all these things. And it's such a great
Exactly.
crossover that people miss in our space that it because it's not like a Tiger Woods or a Tom Brady or something like that. They don't think is relevant to just life change, behavior change, health change
Right.
habits. And it's like
Yep.
it's so much more important than you realize that something that we regurgitate over and over is that performance coaching, you're performing every day in your life. In every aspect of your life, you're performing. And that's where
Exactly.
performance coaching is so important. Performance mindset coaching, like genuinely educated mindset coaching. It's like
Right. Right.
you're performing every day, whether you believe it or not. How you show up as a husband, as a father, as an employee or a business owner, as a contractor, as an athlete, as a gym goer, at any point, these domains, in my opinion, you're performing. So knowing how we can improve with minimal change, the
Yes.
throughput to get the output in those performances matters.
Exactly. Amen. Amen. On so many levels. Like, this is one of the things that's like so challenging for the human mind, right? Because it's natural to want to all the stuff. There's lots of, right? It's the reward system. It's like, it's novelty is just the neuroscience, right? We know that. I'm like, the brain loves to more new. Oh, that sounds awesome. That sounds awesome. That sounds awesome. And we don't recognize, like, well, that sounds awesome. But if you're talking about a high performer, the irony is I want to go to the top and I want to be the best. And we point this out to people all the time. It's like, okay, if you really want to be a part of that class and go there, okay, all the excitement you're feeling and all that stuff. And it's like, oh,
We're
everything
gonna take
new.
that away.
It's actually boring when you go to that side. I hate to break it to you, but
Yeah.
that life is super boring.
Yep.
But what you fall in love with is the boredom because
Yes.
you don't feel all this chaos anymore. You feel balance. You're like, all right, I just got to do that today. Cool. Like
Yep.
it's the irony of peace, right?
Yep.
It's like I want to do all this, and there's all kinds of ideas. Yeah, there is. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, but
Yep.
all you have to do is pick the one way that works for you.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it's with our goal scorers. There's lots of ways you can score, but just let's find the way that works for you. Like, you
Yeah.
don't have to do all the ways. And that it's interesting when you bring it up is like we have one of our foundational principles, right? In our mindset method is simplify my game. The
Hmm.
reason we hit that so they know simplify my game is we use the framework simplicity plus consistency equals sustainability. And the
Yes.
reason we use that and where people get confused with simplicity, oh, that means easy. No, 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 no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
As a
Yeah.
high performer, I didn't say
Yeah.
simple and it's going to be easy. No, 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 no. Simplicity is I've picked the primary target. I've realized, wow, there is a lot on the menu. There's a lot of things that I could go with, but I've simplified my process and I've trusted and I
Mhm.
believe if I stick to this, but now I do it consistently, then the sustainability aspect is going to bring me peace of mind.
Mhm.
It's going to make me feel good about what I'm doing. I now can just show up and not feel like the burden, right? Like one thing we'll talk about, like with our hockey players in the off season, our pro guys, once they're 4 or 5 years in, I tell all of our young guys all the time, like once they're 4 or 5, 6 years in, they go into the summer, they're literally doing the same program that they've done the last couple years. Like they've already figured out, okay, cool. Oh yeah, rinse and repeat. I'm going to run the same program, maybe tweak a little something here, but I now know, at least in that category, what I need to do to sustain what I did last summer. So the cognitive burden of they now don't have to think about that. But on the ice, they might work a little different skill. So because they're going to work on that skill, that's where they're going to put their thought process.
Yeah.
But the other stuff that they've been doing, how they're eating, what they're doing in the gym, it's turned off. They okay, yeah, hey, the output. If I just do that, I'm going to be golden again. I'm going to feel good again, like the way I did this past year. I'm doing that again.
Hmm.
But it's this no, no, I got to go to the gym every summer. I got to do everything all out in every category and new, 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 as opposed to that's not the way professional people do it. Like
Hmm.
once you figure out what works for you, cool, it's enough. It's good enough. I don't need more. But I am going to put my thought process over here. And that, to your point, is the art with this stuff, right? And that's where the wisdom has to come in as the practitioner to be able to like see those things and realize okay, this person gets this. Cool. Oh, that works for you. Awesome. All right. Well, then we don't need to change any of that. I'm not even going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Let's focus on this. And let me help
Yeah.
you to clarify what you're going to do there. And that's the wisdom part, right? Like I love
It,
to hear in your take too of like it's a wisdom part.
it's funny how you just put it because one of the things that I try to teach, especially with body composition, bodybuilders, they get very nuanced in trying to do a lot, right? It's like, I can do more cardio, I can do more output, I can do more steps, weighted vest, I can go on the treadmill for another hour, I can do training more. And I'm like, it's always funny how one of the biggest wisdoms that I instill in my team is having them understand that it's easy to be all in on the stuff that you love, right? So you love the feeling of being driven and output and training hard and the sweat, the grind, the cuss, the blood, sweat, and tears. We all live for that, training mentality. The dieting's the fun part. I can eat food. That's easy. But all in isn't just all in on the stuff that you love. That's easy. That's the easy part. All in means even the stuff you don't want to do, which means relaxing, which means sleeping more, which means doing less, which means going to get remedial tissue work, which means massages, which means putting your feet up and playing the PlayStation. The one of the best things that I teach people is to sleep as hard as you train. If you're telling me you're all in and you'll sleep for 6 hours a night, but you're training 4 hours a day, I'm going to reconfigure that program, take 2 hours off that training session, put it back into your sleep and go, hey, trained hard, sleep hard. But that's where, like you said, the elite guys understand this concept. It's not just all in on the stuff that they love doing, which might be being on the ice and being training or being in the gym and, trying to, especially when they start getting leaner and the abs start showing and they want to be at the gym more because it looks good. That's the easy part. But
Right.
can you structure your life to do a little bit less? Can you structure yourself to be a little bit more cognizant and, prepared and deliberate and get to that state of flow so life is a little less taxing? One of the skills that I teach for people is, especially in bodybuilding preps where food gets so depleted and they get so exhausted, is I put an evaluation on things and I call it your cognitive currency. So let's say you start the day with 100 points or 100 coins, 100 credits. I don't care, whatever you want to put it as. Every time you do something, every time you have to make a decision or an action or a choice, it costs a dollar, a coin, a value, a unit. Now, at the start of prep, at the start of bodybuilding, it doesn't cost very much to do most stuff. It's, you've got the energy, you feel pretty good. So you get away with doing a fair bit before the value exchange starts to go up. When you get to that back end point of the high pressure and the physique's really starting to change, the hunger's kicking in, the exhaustion's kicking in, fatigue is setting in, the more decisions you have to make, the simpler decisions you have to make, even the simple level stuff starts to cost more to get the same output. So you're having to invest more emotional bandwidth or more cognitive value to get that same output that you wanted, because you just don't have the energy. You don't have the fuel. It's costing you so much to think. And this is where teaching flow state, autonomous environments, constructing self-determination, having emotional buy-in from your athletes and clients, the more habituation systems and rituals that I can create or routines, the less thinking I have to do, the more deliberate I just am in my actions and everyday purpose. Suddenly I've got a little bit more coins to spend. So, in the case of our world, there's no such thing as a perfect prep, just like there's no such thing as a perfect season. Anyone who's ever played team sport or any sport knows there is no such thing as a perfect season. You can start the season off with a list of A plus athletes and superstars. You might have 5 of them by the end of the season, and you've got the third string guys now stepping up because there's been injuries and trades and sell-offs and God knows whatever else. There's always something. So the more in the back end where pressure is high, if you can save a few of those extra coins, you have the ability to then deal with, instead of collapse under, the weight of those decisions. And that's where I find that systemization and trying to, as you sort of put it, create less thinking and simplicity, so the decision's already made. It doesn't cost you as much cognizant load. It doesn't cost you as much cognizant value. So when those things do inevitably go wrong, we've got a little bit more bandwidth to make those decisions. We've got a little bit more, the drama in the household, or maybe the mortgage is a little bit more, behind, or, power went out, or, there's a car accident, or perhaps someone just bumped into you. You got a little bit more up your sleeves to go, you know what? We're going to deal with it. We'll solve it. It's all good. Back at it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
You don't have those systems in place. You don't have that awareness of what cognitive values are. And all of a sudden you're just sending energy at every single thing that comes up. And you're like, oh, you're halfway through the season. You're like, I have nothing left. What is this? It's not the physiology. The body will go where the mind tells it to go, right? Like, the amount of times everyone has said that, but how many athletes actually understand it for that concept? And that's like, in as you, to your point, trying to teach wisdom. It's one of the best things I teach my guys and girls is get into that place of understanding systemization and routine. So you take decision fatigue away. Then you have, you would just love the process because, like, oh, this is all automated. This is great. I'm just rinse and repeat at this point. I'm falling in love with it. It's not that high, sexy energy, random, shiny object syndrome. It's just rinse, repeat, process orientation. And then when something doesn't ever go wrong, or, something comes up, I can pivot. It's easy. But and that's something that I've found has transcended fields, different sports, business, life. Like, the cognitive currency is something I found myself teaching to people even outside of gym or training. So that, to your point about wisdom, like you said, it's not about giving them all these tools and concepts all at once. It's like, hey, if I can teach you this thing, you're going to start to make your own decisions about what's most valuable to you. And then all of a sudden you're making the on the fly calls, being like, that's about 2 points. That's worth about 2 points or 2 coins or 2 values or 2 units, whatever. I can make that decision. I've got some coins left over. I'm good to go.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant. What I love so much about, where my brain space of, like, you took me on that adventure, right, is like relationships, right? The
Yes.
way you went into, there's gamification, there's economic principles. So it's relatable to real world of what you just did with the coins and helping people understand, right? So it's like that relatable aspect right there. And I think that's where a lot of practitioners, or anyone dealing with high level don't realize, like there's always a relationship to your point, right? Of like where, another analogy, if we know how our lives are, that if we're dealing with, a spouse or a friend or a boss, that suddenly the cognitive burden, right, become that space. Oh my God, dealing with you every single time there's an issue, there's a problem, it's just too much. Like you expect so much of me. There's a relationship where by doing that consistently, so my relationship with, my job, people around me, right? The way I take care of myself, that relationship that I have, it's amazing how people don't recognize, like, yes, if it's you expect too much from the thing, from your art, from your discipline, you think of it like normal relationships in life. If you do the same thing to another human being, you're
Mhm.
going to be overwhelmed. It's going to
Yeah.
feel overwhelming. It's going to be like, oh my God, like stop. Like, I can't stand this. Whereas, what's the best relationships? Hey, we understand each other. We've made peace with one another. Like, we love each other. Like, hey, you don't make me go nuts. I don't make you go nuts. Cool. And that relatable aspect of it, I think that's the part where a lot of people don't recognize we're having the same experience of what we have in one context.
Mhm.
It's the relationship we have. What's the
Mhm.
meaning in the relationship we have with the other context where we do find this peace of mind within that context? And that's the part that's so fascinating, right? And when it comes to the wisdom part, because that's one of the things I always notice with younger minds in the field is that I have all these ideas and I want to speak the ideas, the theories, right? I want to talk about
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
self-determination theory and I want to talk about these ideas. And it's like, well, right. The reason you want to talk about those ideas is because you don't have actual real world experience and
Yeah.
evidence to talk about that.
Yeah.
And to your point, the sensitivity, right? Like one example I'll give is that players, the younger I'll get a 22, 23-year-old will hit me up and say, hey, coach, how do I do what you do? And so we go into a half-hour conversation. I start telling them about my history and what I've done. I've coached, I've played, like I've run my own company, I've done all these things. And they're like, whoa, whoa, wait, I didn't realize you did all that. And it's
They
like
just
they
thought it
don't
was like this.
realize, right? They thought I got into the mental performance, and I'm like every other mindset mental performance coach out there. It's like, nah, like I've been
Yeah.
doing all these other things, and I've taken now and realized I love the mindset piece and talking about that to see holistically, collectively, how to think as a team.
Mhm.
Like I fell in love with that, but I did all these other things that I draw off of strength and conditioning, skills
Yeah.
coaching. Like I did all these things that now I draw from that and
Yeah.
create those parallels to help people understand. But that relationship aspect, I think that's the part where,
Yeah.
when we talk about that synergized, collective, holistic view, that's the part that we miss so much in that relationship gap, right? Another example that I always find interesting is how often I'll get somebody will say, they'll see some materials that I give to an athlete. Oh my God, that's too much. Like that's a lot. Like you gain so much. I'm like, okay, that's a lot in your interpretation.
Yeah.
What you're looking at looks like a lot to you.
Mhm.
That's not, in fact, a lot to the athlete that I work with because when I give
Yeah.
it to them, I'm making it very simple and helping them understand, hey, I was clear on this so you understand the steps, but here's the mainframe, here's the simplified version, here's what we're looking for. So in this way, they have this duality, but I'm using it as a piece of wisdom for them to take with them, just in case when I'm not around, that they can kind of work through, oh, okay, these are the steps. Hey, Vinny, what do you mean here? But so much of the time with other people, they'll look at it and go, well, that seems like too much. It's like, well, what are you basing that on? Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean that's too much? Based on what?
Relative to
Like,
what?
yeah, relative to what? Like, I get it from your perspective. It looks like a
Yeah.
lot, and it looks like you're reading like 10 pages of Chinese language. That's just to you is like, I don't get this. Like, hey, I appreciate that. I have no problem, but it's amazing to me how you can't appreciate it back.
Yeah.
You want to tell me what you think,
Yeah.
and this is the art of coaching. It's like I want to tell you what I think, and it's like that's not like, hey, okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a dialogue instead of you getting upset and being like, I just think it's too much. It's like, okay, well, let me explain why it's not on my side.
Mhm.
But you don't even want to hear my end. And that's, again, this is the relationship aspect I find so much in high performance where it's all just relationships. Like, what's
Yeah.
the relationship to what we're doing? What's the relationship to each other? Like, how do we feel about it? And that's like that simplified version with all this stuff that fascinates me, right? And all this that people struggle to see.
Yeah. I think a key point there that people should really be able to take away from this is one of the things that I find that makes it so easy for me to connect to my athletes and my clients, and I think you'll be a very similar way, just in what you described, is not any particular theory that I've read, not any particular language that I've studied or models that I've broken down or frameworks that I've tried to construct for my own clients, but it's because I've varied myself so much and I put myself in so many different environments and contexts. I've been a consultant for companies. I've help performance manage companies and team culture. I've implemented like what I believe is the sports context in business world. I've worked with bodybuilders, I've worked with performance athletes, I've played team sports at a high level. Rather than just saying, hey, this is what framework X says, or this is what theory Y does, you can kind of extrapolate from the theory, the environment, or the experience or the evidence of where it's worked and gone, hey, yeah, that's fine. But in this background here or over here, this is where this got in, right? This is where we did this and it worked, it paid off. And it in my experience has led to better relationships because I can find, and Brooklyn says it's a skill that I have that she calls my chameleon effect. Because I've done so many things, I can blend in, and not as like a false, like I'm going to pretend I'm a millionaire and blend in with the big dogs, but genuinely be able to connect on, hey, what's it like in a team sport locker room? What's it like in a high performance locker room? What's it like in a big business meeting or on a bodybuilding stage or being 3% body fat? I can have those conversations and put myself there. So when I'm using the language, I'm not sitting there being like, self-determination theory is based on 6 meta theories that are made up of this and this by Deci and Ryan. And they're talking about, they don't care. I can spit it off if you want to.
Right.
But how does that high performer get the chunk of knowledge that I want in the simplest way? Because we tie it back to what I said before, right? They don't want to make 10 cognitive decisions just in trying to interpret what you said. They've got a $10 million contract on their shoulders saying you need to show up and do this in every game and every training session, be the leader that we need. I don't make them a better leader by going, well, according to this theory and this process, this is what you should be doing and how it works. I go, hey, dickhead, you're being an idiot today. This is what I need you to do. Or, hey, buddy, you know what? Before you go out there, let's do some visualization. Let's work on this. I want you to picture this happening, centralize yourself, control your breathing. When you control your breathing, you're under more control. We have controlled arousal that leads to high performance at peak state. We don't need to be overexcited and try to fight everyone. Having those simple conversations. I've just told him 3 different theories about stress reduction that he doesn't need to know about. But we've just had a very simple conversation about control and breath work and being able to stabilize himself emotionally so that when he's on the ice or he's on the ring or he's on the bodybuilding stage, he's not freaking out and the body's freezing up. That's what I have found to be the biggest experiential builder for me and relationship builder for my clients is not I'm one of very few clients, coaches that I know in bodybuilding hypertrophy that's studying clinical psychology. That isn't why people are choosing me, but it gives me the skills and the tools and some of the frameworks to help. But taking that from my background and my other studies and my experiences and going, here's this really simplified concept. That's building that relationship you're talking about, being able to simplify that knowledge piece and going, what's my relationship to this guy? What's his relationship to knowledge? What's his relationship to the context? So I can say, oh, this is all you need to hear. I just need you to do this one thing. And then all of a sudden, they're on the ice worrying about what they're doing on the ice, not, oh, but Ben told me about these 5 theories right before I walked on stage or before I walked down the ring, right? Like that's when I pitch a relationship, that's the thing to me where I'm like, it makes it so much easier to blend in, going back to that point about, young coaches coming into the scene or like young athletes coming into the scene. You're like, how do I do what you do? Get time on your belt, experience things, learn different things, put yourself in different places, be willing to learn, ask questions. That to me has got me more experience and value than any degree that I'm finishing.
Nailed it. Nailed it. And what's so funny right there, right, of like the irony with relationships is how you speed up that process, right? So I think about what you just described, and a concept that comes up was from a mentor, right? Nick Peterson had taught me this idea that came from, I believe, computer science of T-learning over I-learning, right? Is who else has solved that problem across other fields? Like see how instead of it just being an I, right, where it's like, okay, I'm just going to dig deep into the one place. Let me go across domains and go, well, in the aviation industry or in the healthcare industry, did they already solve this complex thing you're thinking of? And then see what you can take off of that to solve inside of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it of that art, right? Of being able to look at. So I remember when I was younger, especially coming up, I always used to love watching soccer videos. and watching the practices for hockey, right? And going like, wow, it's so similar in structure of how they come across and the movements they make. Man, you could totally turn this into a hockey drill. Like that's cool. So you're going across the fields and building that. And so that right there, go study, especially in today's world, right? You can study so much that's out there in these other fields. It's on tap information, which is unreal. But then talk to the experts, talk to people that have been in the field that have wisdom and
Mm-hmm.
learn from them of like, all right, so you've been at it for 10, 15, 20 years. What have you seen as the most important aspect?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So recently I was talking to a sports psychologist, he's been around like 30 years. I've been doing the work. He's deep into it, worked at the Olympics, all this type of stuff. Right. And specifically not naming him for a reason, but but he's a beauty if he watches this. A lot of him he knows what I'm talking about. But it was like, I asked him point blank of like, all right, so what's the most important thing that you'd say right now to focus in on? Right. And so he goes, all right, so the DSM book on mental health, just make sure you understand as much as you can about mental health. That's a big part. And then he was like, and then the other part too is make sure that when it comes to the research, that the way it's studied, like how did they come to the conclusion? Like make sure you understand inside out of how it, like the research, what it went through, how it was studied, just understand those dynamics. And I found it cool. I didn't have to go searching and trying to learn
Yeah.
all of it. He's like, this is what most important. Boom. If you want to go into doctorate level, like just make sure that this type of stuff is hammered away. Thank you. Awesome. Now just sped up to your point of simplified because and another thing too is because I'm coachable, I'm
Mm-hmm.
adaptable, like I'm open to receiving this information. Right. As a human being, that's a principle of mine of I'm not just going to sit there and close myself up and think everyone else in this world is an idiot, which we both know. And ego, a lot of these leaders, a lot of these coaches, it's I know all the answers. And it's like, no, you don't. No, you
Yeah.
don't. Like we
Yeah.
don't. We don't. It's literally impossible. Like I don't understand what it's like to be you. I don't understand what it's like to be my wife. I don't understand to be my kids. I don't know what it's like to be you. I know what
Mm-hmm.
it's like to be me in my vehicle, in the way I operate. But somebody else somewhere else, like I don't know what it's like to be you in your vehicle and your experiences in your life. But that's the part, right, where as you walk through this process, you have to be able to like understand all these different nuances to what
Mm-hmm.
this is, and then be able to build around like, all right, cool. Like I get this, like I understand, how to roll through this. And that's the interesting part, that I found with all of this is how challenging those aspects are of being open to that, but then also understanding like, all right, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to study other fields and then bring it back to what makes sense. And then, oh, let me talk to other people that might have wisdom and might be better. Like to your point, this is the holistic nature of all these ways that exist
Mm-hmm.
that if you understand the relation and you engage right in reality in that way, it's amazing how much you can speed up these things when you simplify and
Yeah.
when you build those connections and relationships.
Yeah, I need to actually ask you a question because we've just been absolutely ripping into conversations here as opposed to actually getting into some structured questions. I mean, look, to be fair, if you're listening to this and you haven't found nuggets in coaching gold here, I don't know what to tell you. And
Right.
this is anyone that listens to my stuff knows that I can talk for 4 straight hours and not even have an answer. But if you
Yeah.
haven't found answers and advice in the importance of simplicity, relationships, how to connect with
Yes.
athletes or clients, I don't know what you're listening to because it's in there.
Right.
But at the level now, right? We've established here very clearly. You operate at a very high level, and as we sort of spoke about off screen, I think a lot of my listeners and followers will probably understand by now is I like to take high level and I like to humanize it. I don't like to put high level on this pedestal of untouchable. Instead, for me, it's like it's not like there's Mount Olympus, I can't get there. It's there's Mount Olympus. How many feet can I get closer to it? How do I climb my way just a little bit up that mountain, just get a little bit closer? I get closer to the gods. Um,
Yeah.
and one of the things I'm curious on for you is you've been at that level where you've worked with these guys, right?
Mhm.
What separates the mindset of a pro athlete from someone who you probably see like, oh yeah, you want it, but you're probably going to stay amateur. There's not a lot of skill difference once you get to the top leagues, right? Like, and I've seen this across sports, in rugby league, in soccer, in basketball, in AFL, in boxing, in NFL, hockey. Most of the skill sets when you get to that top level, there's going to be outliers of freak skill, but generally, like, the skill sets are kind of fundamentally developed to get, you're already one of 1%, just to be in that league. You're already there at that top level. But
Exactly.
what's that mindset difference from the pro who's going to be good at being a pro and get to pro status, and those athletes who are kind of always going to be that permeable sort of amateur that, that delta between that helps them get across that they're missing.
Yeah, great question. That's why it came up a lot over the summer as well. Um, the two biggest variables that I see is consistency and the commitment to an identity or a character, right? Because what happens, like I always think back to one of my buddies, I used to work with, and he told me the story, right, of how, he's playing in the NHL at the time, and it was with the Nashville Predators at the time, and he comes out after the game, and he was a defenseman, and he comes out of the game, and he's talking to the coach. He comes out to the bus, and he thought he played terrible. He's like, oh, I don't think I did anything today, da da. And the coach comes up to him, and he's like, hey, before he gets on the bus, hey, come over here. He comes over to him and he goes, great job tonight. He's like, that's exactly how you need to play. And he's like, wait, if I just keep it simple and I play at that, you're going to pay me 2.5 a year really to do that? And he said after that, he just had this like, oh, cool. And so then after that, he just realized, okay, just keep taking care of my body, keep making sure I'm
Mm-hmm.
consistent in my routine, keep doing what I need to do, and just keep holding myself up and keep playing the role that they want. Don't go outside and don't try to do too much.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do the other stuff that I thought that I had to go be offensive and go do all these other things. It was just stick to my identity, stick to my character, stick to what they want me to do. And so that's the biggest thing that I see is the ability to recognize what you need to be consistent in so you
Mm-hmm.
don't blow yourself up, right? I always like, I always like the idea of like the synergy, right? Of thinking of it as if you're 80% good enough, at four or five things, you don't have to be perfect at it, but if you're 80% good enough, the synergy of that is going to allow you to be pretty high level.
Mm-hmm.
So consistency is not being 100% all the time, but it's being really pretty good at multiple levels of nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
sleep, getting in the gym. Like, okay, it was good enough today. Like I hit my 80% threshold minimum every day. Like, okay, that was good enough. I didn't have to kill it all the time. And so that's what the highest levels are so good at is they understand clearly what I need to be consistent with in my particular process, what's going to keep me
Mm-hmm.
sustainable, high energy, clear thinking, feeling good in general. But then it's also, this is the identity. So I know this is what's expected of me. Especially if it's, I run my own company, well, then my identity is what? Like, who am I? What do I need to show up as? And that's one of the things that I worked really hard through is like, okay, if I'm the mindset person, that's what I'm going to do. Well, then when I'm in the pro environment with a team or when I'm working with a player and I'm not in their culture, I don't know the dynamics of what's going on. I understand the character of, all right, I've identified what my role is within this confine. Like, this is the character that I play. I don't know the other variables.
Mm-hmm.
So, as an example for listeners, when I'm talking to somebody that I don't know the variables, now my line of questioning shifts completely. So, because I'm not there, well, what did the coach say to you? Was there anything in particular? Did you get some social feedback today that was specific that tells you that what you've been working on is either good or you need to get better at it? What is your line mate? How are they thinking about what you're doing? Right. So because I'm not there to be able to see it, I can create now a line of question because of the character that I'm playing. Hey, I'm your outside resource, but I want to make sure that you're asking the questions that I know you're likely not asking
Yeah.
when you're in it. You're focused on your own thing. So that identity, that character, right? Knowing what your role is
Mm-hmm.
and the consistency of taking care of yourself, showing up all the time, making sure that you're just maintaining and sustaining that level of, okay, I feel good today. I'm ready to go. Those are the two biggest variables. That is the difference between the top and everybody else. Like I use the analogy of farmer mindset. It's boring.
Yeah.
A lot of times it is boring it's boring to me. It's not boring to
Yeah.
somebody else, right? It's
Yes.
boring to me, but the fun part about it's boring to me, again, how that language, like you said earlier, right, of like that interpretation of how people think about, with when you're thinking about restriction, or in the psych space, it's abnormalities. Ooh, words,
Yeah.
weird,
Yeah.
right? And it's like,
Yep.
in our world, boring is actually fun. Like I
Yep.
love boredom now as I've
Yep.
gotten like, and I've understood how hey, it's cool the level that I'm at. And I love that it's boring at times because, it's supposed to be boring. You're doing a good job. Like the more boredom you're feeling, the more you know, all right, I'm aligned with what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yep.
But everything that I'm actually doing, if you followed me around and you saw what the day looked like, it's anything but boring to you, the
Yeah.
listener, whoever it is. It's like, oh,
Yep.
that's pretty cool. But to me, it's like, yeah, it's rinse and repeat. I'm not, there's a lot of stuff I'm just doing that's like, yeah, I'm just upholding and sustaining what I need to do. So those are the big dog variables for sure, is that, the consistency, you have to align and know what that is for you specifically, like
Mhm.
understanding yourself in that way of what do you need to be consistently good on your habits, what's going to keep you upheld. That's what those pros are so good at, is like, yep, it's automatic. It's boring. I'm going to do it because I know. And then I know my identity. Like, this is what
Mhm.
I'm here to do. This is my role. I'm not going to step out of my lane of like, here's how I'm going to support what I'm a part of. And if you can get those two things and you can master those, you can be at high levels in so many different industries.
Man, there's so many things that run through my head just hearing that. There's a few tools that I help people share to try and understand consistency in a way that isn't really taught. Again, it's kind of mixing, that high performance route in the average person. And like you sort of touched on, people think that consistency is 100% all the time or 100% perfection, and I've got to be consistently perfect. Like they're two different, very different things. Consistent and perfect are very
Mhm.
different things.
Big time.
The It's a very simple math equation to me, right? If I have X amount of workload in my week, right, and so many things I can only get done, I might be able to dedicate 80%, 50% of my cognitive and physical load to my training. But if I go into that training already believing that I'm going to train like shit and I'm going to train like crap and I'm not going to show up that day and only give 50%, well, what's 50% of 50%, right? 25%. I've already cut that variable in half and now I'm at a quarter of what I could be doing. So the idea for me is to try and teach people to understand is give the maximum effort of the percentage that is available on the day. If you are
Mhm.
going into the gym and you've had a rough day, you got two kids, you're a shift worker, you're on night shift. I've got FIFO workers, so fly in, fly out miners, shift workers. I've got defense force personnel. I've got emergency services, multitude of people in different high demand energy fields, right? You're at the end of your shift, it's been night shift, you're busy, you're tired. I don't expect you to go in there and give me a PB on every single lift. In fact, that might be detrimental. What I'm going to hope is that you show up and give me the best effort that you have and walk out of there and go, even though it wasn't the best session, I left everything on the table that I had to give. Now, those two things make a very big difference in the outcome, especially in like when it comes to things like bodybuilding preps and performance clients. If you can show up and do that, you are well and truly ahead of the pack, because most people will go, oh, it's the end of my night, my shift is over, I'm just not going to show up, I'm not going to turn up and do my thing. It's
Yep.
I'll train tomorrow, and then they don't train tomorrow. And then the other thing
Mhm.
that I try and teach is make your B game so good that it looks like other people's A game. If you can
Love
get so good at your B game, being so high level through sheer consistency, intensity of effort, and deliberate action, you are just creating this average for yourself that is just consistently showing up at a high level. Then eventually what happens is your average, which if we look at the law of averages, right, everyone can't always operate in an A game, right? That's just not how math and averages work. If we are always on our A game, well, it wouldn't be an A game. That'll be your average. That's the rule. That's what
exactly.
you're trying to achieve. Your average game, your B game should be so good that you turning up looks like a superstar performance to everyone else.
Right.
And if you can do that, holy shit, your identity changes. You just become the guy that
Mhm.
shows up and does his job. But to you, it's just, this is how I show up. This is who I am.
Bingo.
I show up and deliver.
Bingo.
But if
Yep.
you're like waiting for that, flow state to magically happen, you're waiting for that A game to fluke and, kind of hope it turns up, you're going to be forever chasing something you can't control. But if you turn up
Mhm.
with my B game is better than everyone else's A game, well, even if they're at their best, then guess what? Your average is better than their best. How does that,
Exactly.
like, that can't not lead to higher performance? It's just
Exactly.
like it's a math equation. It's simple
Bingo.
laws of average. If you take
Bingo.
away and again, that's where I talk about trying to shift the perspective on, high performance thinking, or these guys are too good for me. They're about, no, no,
Yep.
no. Let's look at this as numbers and math and simple equations.
Bingo. Nailed it.
Average. That's all it is. It's averages.
That's it. That's it. And even statistically speaking, right? Like when you talk from that standpoint of categorization, like I always love the A, B, C game, right? And it's like, well, if we're talking about it from a research standpoint, it's actually simple. It's just like there is no A is relative. You're like it's subjective to you. You
Yep.
think it's A game, that's my best game, and my B game is not so great. But the
Yep.
reality is you're still playing the game at a high level.
Yeah.
It's just a different variation that you've adapted. It's not
Hmm.
actually quote unquote better.
Yeah.
It's just a different variation of playing in the same game. Like
Yeah.
you're still at the same place. You've just adapted a different way of thinking of how I can still be successful in another way. And that's what you nailed. And I love how you hit that of like, that's what so many people don't realize. Like, yeah, if you can raise that average of like
Mhm.
that, exactly. Like you're just playing it another way that you've been able to see and feel and go
Mhm.
like, wow, I can still be successful doing that. And
Yeah.
that's the hard part. And yeah, it brings me up like it made me think of this other one. I did a video on this a while back of for a lot of our players because it was kind of coming up over the summer. It's like fuck your feelings. And what did it mean was like how often can we all relate to oh, I'm so tired today. Going to the gym today. Oh, I'm gassed.
Mhm.
I'm gonna suck today. Hardest part was getting there. And then you get
Yeah.
to the gym and you go and you're like, oh, I felt really, really good. Or it was like one of your best days. But your feelings were, I'm going to suck today. Or vice versa. You're like, oh, I feel great today. Like, here we go. I'm feeling myself. Like, I'm going to be awesome. And then you go in and you're like, oh my God, I feel like shit today. Like, I can't do anything
That's
today.
not happening.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so to your point of like this idea of how I'm feeling about it as a high performer, consistency is right. I always love those little like Gary Vee just put out like the cups, and this is what consistency is, right? It's like you take a little shot glass and it's a little bit of, but that's what people don't realize is like consistency is recognizing my feelings are gonna be my feelings. Every day is gonna kind of be like the weather. Sometimes it's gonna be, I feel amazing today. Cool, that's fine. I feel like shit today. Cool, that's fine. Like it's not gonna stop me from, okay, here's what I'm responsible for. Here's what I'm committed to doing. I'm just gonna go do that, no matter
Mhm.
how I'm feeling.
Mhm.
And that's the art, right? Of like to your point of like being able to look at it and understand the consistency aspect of the ratios and the
Mhm.
math. Like that's the whole point is that you've mentally, from a mindset perspective, you've already mentally identified and not imagination. Oh, I'm imagining it. It's no, it's based off of real world data. Like
Mhm.
you've sat, you've been thoughtful, you've been aware of your process for years, decades, maybe. Like you've really paid attention to your life and you go, yep, I know this is what I need to do. And I'm going to do that today, even though I still feel like this, right? Any
Mhm.
parent, knows of like with your child of like, okay, I'm coming home from work and I'm super stressed out. What am I going to do at dinner table? Yell at them and freak out at them? Or no, I know I love them. So boom, as soon as I come in, all right, hey, I'm pretty stressed out right now. You know where you're at. Okay, how am I going to engage with them? Let me tell some jokes with them. Let me come in, smile with them, give them a hug. Let me right away feel the love with them and understand that I'm not going to bring my shit to the table right
Mhm.
now and make them feel off. But I'm recognizing in my energy system of here's how I want to show up and here's what I want to do consistently with my energy in that aspect of it. And it's the same idea, right? Of like, it's that choice, that character, that identity, right? That but to your point of like, that it's also recognizing that consistency isn't this feeling of amazing all the time. That's not
Yeah.
reality either. Like high performing, you don't feel great all the time. You feel like shit a lot of the time,
Yep.
but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like it's not a, oh my God, I don't feel great today. I can't show up. Like, no, I'm still going to show up because I mentally know what needs to be done today. So I'm just going to
It's it's
do it.
it's funny when it comes to emotional regulation when people describe this thing. Often what they're describing is symptomology of manic bipolar or like manic episodes, right? Like when they're really talk what they're describing, you look at it from a DSM perspective, you're like, you're describing the symptomology and pathology of someone having episodic criteria. You're talking about these rapid bursts of like, oh, I didn't feel amazing today, like the world was going to open up and the heavens were bright. I didn't. Yeah, we call that episodic. We call that manic. Like that's not something you're supposed to feel. Like we talk about emotions and it's like there's it, the sway of positive and negative emotions. It's always negative emotions or these lower emotions are bad and positive emotions are great. You shouldn't be dictating your responses on any emotions. But that's usually what happens, right? It's like, oh, well, I don't feel good about this, or I don't feel happy about this, or I don't feel joyous about this, so it's bad. Well, no, you're just you're describing these episodic periods where you think that you should feel like you just won the lottery because the coach gave you praise, or because you did your job on the ice, or you stuck to your diet. No, this is where stuff gets boring. I call this the boring middle. When you're on the way to succeeding, you're in the boring middle. You're in the part where it's
Bingo.
no longer that exciting, but that's what the excitement is. The pursuit of
Bingo.
excellence and the process of developing excellence isn't sexy. It's
Exactly.
consistently simple. And
Yep.
this is where people dive off and people drop off. And I think to your point about, what leads to that higher level of success and making it in the pro league is, can you do simple longer than other people to the point where you've actually got really good? Then you can add the trick stuff. Then you can add the complexity. But once you have that simplicity under control, that's the part where people can you ignore the other shiny objects long enough where you make the 6-figure business or the 7-figure business? Can you stick to one degree instead of having to chop and change, and all of a sudden you're a 10-year permanent student with no education? And, in your sporting background, can you choose that sport and see it through to master? Kobe used to shoot 500 free throws if he missed on a game. That's free throws for a guy who played at Kobe's level.
Yep.
That, if that doesn't click in your head, whether it be body composition, hockey, performance field, sports, business, it doesn't matter. The simple stuff is what works, but it's, can you do it simply enough and long enough for people to really, for the world to catch up and realize how good you are, or for life to catch up and let it actually happen. You've got to be able to do that simple stuff. And that's, I think, the biggest identity shift is not looking for the sexy and shiny, but going, I do this. And this is, one of the things that I really love to teach is how people really misunderstand motivation. When they often talk about motivation, oftentimes they're talking about inspiration. For me, motivation is intrinsic, trying to build intrinsic motivation, a love of what you do for the love of doing it. I love the process for the fact that the process helps me grow, not because it gives me an outcome. The outcome comes as a byproduct.
Right.
Stick to the simplicity. Love the simplicity for its process, and all of a sudden the outcome takes care of itself. There's literally that the book, the score takes care of itself.
Yeah.
Like it's all there. It's simple, but again, to us, this is everyday life. But to people, it's like, oh, this isn't sexy. It can't be that. That's too simple. It can't be that answer, right? Like that's where we get. And I'm curious on how you deal with that in athletes. It's a very long-winded question, but how do you deal with that in athletes that come through with that, where you're like, hey, it's got to be simpler than this. It's not always going to be shiny, sexy, polarizing stuff. If that's the thing that we know is the difference, whether it be, bodybuilders, hockey players, NFL players, how do you teach that through to them to go, hey, you know what? Let's drop that excitement level a little bit. Let's drop that shiny object chasing, nail the basics.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. And that's so the big part of and it makes me think of this one case that I was a player back in the day. It was in college. So to your point, this is one, he wasn't at the top level, right? It was just like he's going through trying to figure things out. And you could tell it was, well, I want to be one of the top players on the team and I got to figure that out. And there's anxiety that comes with that, right? That cognitive burden of like, I got to do all this stuff. And so the teaching mechanism, and this is something that, I've fallen into a lot, that I try to point out in the professional realm, is that there's this idea of, well, don't tell them what to do. Like, we want them to be creative. We want them to figure it out for themselves and figure it out on their own. And I'm like, well, through my research of what I've done over the years, actually, it's kind of a combination. Some players, yes, give them the autonomy, let them figure it out on their own. But then others would be a lot more successful if we gave them the answer to the test, reduced that, and just said, do this. If you do this, you're going to build up. And it always kind of makes them go, what do you mean? And it's like, well, this is the player that I'm talking about, to your point of where in that player's case, what we recognized after a couple of months of work was, all right, I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do as a power forward. Where now, because one of the things he was having cognitively, that he was struggling with the decision making that was really upsetting the team, was when he would come through the neutral zone. So that's like the middle of the ice in hockey. He'd come through the neutral zone. He'd always get caught up cognitively. It was just one decision, but when he had the puck coming through there, he wanted to pass it or keep skating. He couldn't make a choice. He got stuck on, well, every time I get there, it's like 50-50 to me. Should I pass it? Should I skate? Should I pass it? Should I skate? So we turned off the mechanism and I gave him permission. I said, stop thinking about passing it. You're done. There's no more passing it. Now that was coupled on, he had an amazing shot. So what I convinced him of was like, your shot is so good Talk to guys on your team. Talk to the goalie. I'll be shocked if he doesn't tell you you've got the best shot on the team. Your shot's unbelievable. So I went to his strengths. So I build upon understanding what's this player's actual strengths, because then that's nature. We,
Mhm.
again, words. We like to call it strengths. I look at it as that's just their nature. Like we have to call it strengths, but it's like when you say weaknesses, you're going against their nature. It's not something that
Yeah.
they naturally do.
Yeah.
So we identified clearly, okay, when you make that, there's a constraint there that that decision isn't good for you. So we're taking it out. You're just going to go straight, take a shot, go straight, take a shot. So it relaxed him. So we came
Mhm.
up with these components that were like, you're just going to do this for a while. Let's just do these things. Let's not focus on the other stuff and where you're going to pass it. We're going to build everything around that, you going and shooting, you going and shooting. Well, the irony was after about another 4 months of that and holding up consistently and helping work through that, again, as the leader, as a practitioner, helping him understand you're doing a good job. It's coming in. Well, what revealed itself as time went on? Well, he ends up having a conversation with the goalie about 6 weeks later, and he tells him point blank, he's like, hey, man, I don't know how you're just not using your shot every time, but if I were you, your shot is ridiculous. You should be shooting that puck every single time. Boom, right? So the reticular activating system, part of the brain, right? That we get where belief kicks in of like, where's the proof? Well, here we were talking about this, and weeks later, goalie and his team naturally, like he didn't even go, he was kind of felt shy to go ask. Naturally, finally comes up to him and says, hey man, if I were you, I'd be doing this. Boom. Now it hit him like a jolt of lightning. Oh my God, there's proof. And then he completely bought into it, started doing it. And then to your point, the irony was as he kept going over and over again, doing the simple stuff and being able to shoot, shoot, shoot. Well, then a few months later, he was like, oh my God, it all feels so much slower to me. I can now pass it. I now see where I can pass it. And that to me was like a big, as a case, which was like, wow. And I've seen it over and over again is that learn the one way. That's why the identity is so important. Learn the one way to do it. Learn how you can
Mhm.
survive and thrive in the ecosystem. And like, okay, now I'm good. Then, because you've done it so many times, and this is the cool part about the mindset piece of where, because you've done something so many times and it's been effective and you knew the answers in that way, then what happens is everything slows down now.
Mhm.
And because everything's slowed down in your mind, and now it's easy to see other variations because it's experience, it's wisdom, you're used to it. So now because you found one pattern that works, now it becomes like, oh, there's other things going on here that maybe I could do. But until you engage in a way where you feel completely comfortable, and this is what flow state and all these things, right? It's like you've taken the time to at least buy into one mechanism. Here's how I'm going to live in that reality. I'm going to be consistent at it. And then everything starts to go, oh, wow, I've been here for 2, 3, 4 years now. Wow, like I'm in one of the best, environments like out there. Like this is crazy. And then you just naturally go, okay, what else is potentially available? But
Mhm.
you've learned how to survive. You've slowed down the brain to see it. You've gained confidence because you've been around it for so long that ah, now I can do more with it. And so that's the variable of where, again, it's being able to recognize in the human being you're dealing with, is this a person that has the talent to basically do what they're already thinking and do whatever they want? Or is this a person that's highly driven and works really hard and wants it really badly that just because they're scattered and they don't have the talent or the belief or they haven't had the support all those years of, oh, do whatever you want. You're so talented, you're good. There might be this other variable where it's like you work really hard and they're intelligent, they get it, and they want to work hard at it. Give them the answers to the test.
Mhm.
Help them see something they can't see. And then that's the irony of what happens. So that's the generalized cases of where one versus the other, right? Because usually with the other side, the way I work with them is, well, then your responsibility now falls on how are you sharing that knowledge with others. So I help them because a lot of times the ones that are creative and that are amazing at that and they can do their own thing, what they don't recognize is how they impact others around
Yeah.
them and
Yeah.
how they can elevate what's around them. So
Yeah.
that's a whole different schema of what we'll get into, but we'll work with them in that way. But there's that other side that I wanted to make sure to get across is like sometimes we think we shouldn't just tell them what to do, but when we're talking about the highest level, sometimes it is as simple as make them feel comfortable with who they are. Like
Mhm.
you go to their strengths, you tell them you're amazing at that, do that, and then support them so they do it and they get comfortable enough to go, oh, I am confident now, I can hang here. Okay, Now I can relax and be a part of it. Then you can expand and build and do the other stuff now.
See, it's so funny the way, again, talking about how things transfer over and cross over and look at different fields. T study versus I study, right?
Hmm.
In bodybuilding, there's a lot of rhetoric around meal plans being a terrible idea, and you should never have meal plans. You should always intuitive eat and give people options and strategies. I can tell you firsthand the amount of people that I've worked with where they have felt so anxious and overwhelmed trying to make their own macro meal plans and how many meals a day should I have? How many, what protein should I, how do I space out the calories? What carbs here or fats here? Like, what do I, and I just go, hey, you're a very driven, time demanding person who wants to prep everything. I'm going to send you a meal plan that I made, like considering all the health variables that we need to worry about. All 5 serves a day, 2 serves a day. Grains, whole foods, lean meats, etc. Some fun foods in there to get the calories in because we're trying to grow or trying to cut down, whatever it is. Tell me, does it link up with you? Does it sync with you? Do you like these foods? You've told me what food you like. You've sent me I have a food diary, a list where I'm like, give me back the food you don't like. Tell me the food you do like. That gives me a plane to work with. Here is this strategy for you. There's work days and weekends. Let me know what you think. Oh shit, I can follow this. Fantastic. All of a sudden, adherence goes through the roof. Now, I don't want them to be dependent on me, but at the same time, if that frees us up to make decisions later to do other stuff, I might go, hey, you know what? You've got the weekend plan, but you've also got a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I want you to go out, have a meal together. I want you to tell me how you're going to track it. Show me what that looks like on MyFitnessPal chronometer, a nutrition log. What did you do? Oh, I did this and then. Okay, cool. That's pretty close. We could do this probably a little bit better, or maybe measure this a bit better here, or adjust some calorie. But I want to get them moving forward first, get the buy-in, reduce decision friction, and go. You got so many other things on your plate because again, in bodybuilding, it's not a very high-paying sport. Everyone has a job. Everyone has hobbies and stuff is going on. You got other things you're worried about working on. I'm just going to make this decision for you for now. And we're going to learn about it a little bit later. I'm going to teach you nutritional literacy. I'm going to teach you how to eat and fuel. But right now, you're getting stuck on the basics before we even get going. Let's just take away that decision and go right here, straight off the bat. Here's a meal plan. Now, if you need to substitute it, make it. You tell me. Let me know. It's not a restriction where it's like you can only eat this. It's you didn't have any guide rails. Well, here's some guide rails for you. If you want to make some changes, you've got the structure, the template, the system here. You chop and change. Do your thing. Let me know what you didn't enjoy and did. We can practice it. But that decision for them, right? It's like, I've got you moving forward now, and we can teach from the forward operating position, as opposed to we're not going anywhere and suddenly inaction is the only choice. Well, exactly. They're frozen. They're stagnant. I'm not getting a result. They're not getting results. They're unhappy and they leave. They end up getting no results. And all of a sudden, both of us are worse off because of it, because I was scared to say, here's some guidelines. Here's a guide rail for now. The amount of times when I used to hesitate to be like, oh, meal plan. Then I started to work with people and I was like, oh, some people work that way. Some people just want the same thing and will eat it for 6 months at a time. Mm-hmm. I myself work on more of a seasonal modification. So like I will eat the same foods for 3 to 4 months. Seasonal change. I might add in some different flavors, some different vegetables, what's available. I might make some changes. But I know for me and how busy my life is, that simple answer is like, that's it. I'm going to stick there. I'm just going to execute. Brooklyn knows what my meals are. She measures them for me. She has it all prepared. It's fantastic. Great woman. Helps me stay 100% adherent. My coach knows what he says goes in. The output comes out. That's what I'm working towards. So it makes my life easier. I can't be the only one of me. So for a fact, there must be people like me. So like, point to your point, sometimes making the decisions for them to enable them to move forward, or at least reducing the decision fatigue and the friction, paralysis by analysis, right? Reduce that and go, here's what we're going to work on. Here's what we're going to do. Now, all of a sudden, we're 6 months down the track and they're tenfold ahead. Suddenly he goes, oh, I don't like this protein source anymore. What else do you reckon? Well, what protein source do you feel like? Oh, I want some more red meat instead of white meat. Well, it's a little bit higher in fat, so we might have to pull some fats down. What do you want to pull out of fats? Eggs. I could probably put in some avocado. Fantastic. Guess what you just done? Made a meal plan. Yep. Again, talking about, the primary, aim for the primary thing. The secondary things tend to take care of themselves. We get there eventually. So, man, we're going to rattle here for 4 straight hours at this rate. It'll be a Joe Rogan podcast. Everyone will be sick of it. We're going to have probably 3. Yeah. I've got some rapid fire questions and we'll lead to how people can find you, because, I'm going to take up half your day at this rate. But I just want
I love it, man. It's awesome. It's
straight
awesome.
off the top of your head. It's funny because I said I booked in an hour. It was never going to be an hour. Straight off the top of your
It's too
head,
much fun, man.
it's too much fun. One to two word answers. We got some like rapid fire questions. They're gonna be deep, but just rapid fire off the top of your head. What's one belief about mindset you've completely changed your mind on in the last 5 years?
How you present material,
Mm. If an
how you
athlete
present
could, if an athlete
mm,
could only master one skill outside of physical training, what would it be?
awareness of others.
Ooh, I like that. What's the hardest truth most athletes refuse to accept about success?
It's hard.
I was going to say it's probably most of this conversation is boring and simple.
But it's hard, right? Of where it's hard to go against the nature of what you think and what you've brought up to think it is.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And then it's like, dude, you got to go against everything you thought it was going to be.
yeah,
Wait, Santa's not real. It's like,
yeah,
it's hard.
yep.
And then when you figure it out, it's like, wow, wait, it's that easy? Like that's the
I
irony,
made
right? The
this so much
paradox
harder than
of
it
it.
needs to be.
Right, right.
What's your personal ritual before stepping into a high pressure situation? So what's your applied high performance ritual?
Biggest part, meditate, visualize what's happening. So I'll meditate, do breathing, get myself into that state of just like, okay, I want to feel relaxed, calm, ready to go. And then I'm visualizing all the variables of what I think is going to happen. So I look at all the good stuff, the bad stuff potentially, issues I could run into, dynamics of who's there, things of that nature. So I'll just kind of sit there and just go through that. So meditation and visualization is two huge ones.
Finish this sentence. The difference between a good player and a great one is what?
Consistency.
Love it. Oh man, five fantastic answers. I could have added another five to it, but I was like, no, I'll stick with the five we've got. They're great questions, they're great answers, nice and simple and direct. Mate, like I said, we could be here for 4 straight hours. Guys, you are hearing from the top of high performance in the NHL. This is what performance coaching is at that level. And people like when you think of working with elite athletes, we're having conversations about those very athletes and the tools and the skills and how, like we said, simplifying for coaches out there, for athletes out there. It's not more complexity, it's better simplicity. And if you can get that right, there is so much takeaway from this conversation just on that premise alone. If you can get that into your systems, your processes, your own rituals, your training concepts as athletes, and your own approach to your training, man, I appreciate your time. Give us everything to find you, anything coming out recently, anything that's coming up soon. How do we get a hold of you more, and how can people follow you?
Yeah, yeah, no, I appreciate you having me here, man. It was awesome. The simple one is you can find me LinkedIn, right? Vinny Malts. I'm on there. Or Vince Malts, it's under there on that. Instagram, also my Instagram handle at Coach Vinny Malts. Those are the easiest ways, right, to find me in direct right now. It's a lot of the other social medias of like, I definitely know Cav wants me a little bit more on the other ones and all the fun stuff, but
Oh, the content machine, Cav.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But those are the simplest ways. Or email me directly, Vince at bloodlinehockey.com as well. You could just hit me directly if they're following, finding me through the show and stuff like that. Would love to hear from you. That'd be awesome.
Man, I appreciate your time so much. Thank you for jumping on and making for a very fun chat. I'm sure we've got about 10 more between us over the next,
Yeah,
God knows, however long.
no doubt, no doubt. No
Man, well, you
doubt, man.
enjoy the rest of your day, and yeah, we'll be in touch. This won't be
Yeah,
the last one, that's for sure.
you too, brother.